Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel. Every day we bring you powerful real-life stories filled with family drama, betrayal, heartbreak, and unforgettable moments of justice. Today's story is one that stayed with me for a very long time because sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the very people we would have done anything for. Stay until the end, because what happened after I was turned away from my own sister's wedding completely changed my life. I stood frozen in front of the enormous glass entrance of Rolling Hills Country Club outside Bowling Green, Kentucky. For a moment, I honestly thought I had heard my mother wrong. The summer sun reflected off the polished glass doors, forcing me to shield my eyes. My truck sat behind me in the parking lot, covered in road dust from the 7-hour drive. 7 hours. 7 straight hours of construction zones. 7 hours of truck stops. 7 hours of overpriced coffee. 7 hours of fighting fatigue. 7 hours spent believing I was driving toward one of the happiest days in my little sister's life. And now my own mother was standing between me and the entrance. "You can't come inside." The words didn't feel real. I blinked several times. "What did you just say?" My mother crossed her arms. I knew that posture better than anyone. She had used it my entire life whenever she had already made up her mind. Whenever discussion was over. Whenever obedience was expected. "Olivia wants today to remain intimate," she said calmly. I looked around the property. Luxury vehicles lined the valet area. A professional string quartet played near a marble fountain. Elegant guests wandered through the gardens carrying champagne glasses. Massive white reception tents stretched across the lawn. At least 100 people were there. Maybe more. I looked back at her. "Intimate?" Before she could answer, my father stepped beside her. "Madison, please don't make this difficult." Those words hit me harder than they should have. Don't make this difficult. As if I was the one creating a problem. As if showing up to my own sister's wedding was somehow unreasonable. As if I had done something wrong simply by arriving. I glanced toward the ballroom. The doors stood open. Guests laughed inside. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Waiters moved through the crowd carrying silver trays. White roses decorated nearly every visible surface. Thousands of dollars worth of flowers. The expensive imported kind. Funny enough, I knew exactly how much those flowers probably cost. Years of helping family members through financial emergencies had taught me how much everything cost. Hospital bills, mortgage payments, car repairs, credit card debt, tuition payments, emergency loans. I knew because I had spent years helping pay for them. Yet somehow I wasn't important enough to attend the wedding itself. The realization settled heavily in my chest. "Where's Olivia?" I asked quietly. Neither parent answered. They didn't need to. I found her almost immediately, standing near the grand staircase. Wearing a beautiful white wedding gown, she looked radiant, confident, happy. Everything a bride should look on her wedding day. Then she looked directly at me. For one brief second our eyes met. I waited, expected a smile, a wave. Some sign that she was going to fix whatever misunderstanding had just happened. Instead, she turned away. Like I wasn't there. Like I didn't matter. That hurt more than being stopped at the entrance. Much more. Because in that instant, a flood of memories crashed through my mind. I remembered Olivia at 8 years old crying because classmates made fun of her. I remembered walking her home after school, helping her with homework, protecting her from bullies. I remembered taking extra shifts during community college when Dad lost his job and the bills started piling up. I remembered wiring money home while stationed away from Kentucky. I remembered paying electric bills, helping with rent, covering emergencies, fixing problems, solving crises, being dependable, being responsible, being available, always being available. And somehow, after all of that, strangers were sitting inside celebrating while I stood outside in the parking lot. My mother cleared her throat. "You can watch online." I stared at her. "What?" "There will be a live stream." For several seconds, I honestly couldn't process what she was saying. I had driven 7 hours, spent 2 weeks fighting for military leave approval, rearranged my schedule, worked overtime, moved heaven and earth to be there, and now they wanted me to watch the wedding on my phone. Like a distant relative. Like an acquaintance. Like someone who wasn't family. I looked at my father. He nodded. "That's probably the best option." Probably the best option. The words echoed inside my head. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to push past them. Part of me wanted answers. Real answers. But heartbreak doesn't always create anger. Sometimes it creates silence. Sometimes pain cuts so deep that it steals every word from your mouth. I suddenly felt exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of exhaustion that builds over decades. The exhaustion of always being the strong one, the reliable one, the person everyone depends on, the person nobody appreciates until something goes wrong. I looked at my mother, then my father, then my sister. Finally, I nodded. Understood. Just one word. No argument, no scene, no tears. Then I turned around and walked away. Nobody stopped me. Nobody called after me. Nobody chased me into the parking lot. Nobody even hesitated. That was the part I remembered most. How easy it was for them to let me leave. I climbed into my truck and shut the door. The sound echoed through the cab. For several moments, I simply sat there staring through the windshield. Wedding guests continued arriving. Families laughed together. Children ran across the pavement. Life moved forward as if nothing had happened, as if my heart hadn't just been shattered in the parking lot. Eventually, I started the engine. The country music station I'd listened to during the drive immediately resumed playing. Normally, I loved those songs. That day, it all sounded like noise. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed. A notification appeared. Wedding live stream invitation. I stared at it, then turned the phone face down. 40 minutes later, I found myself parked outside a travel center near Interstate 65. The smell of gasoline and fresh coffee drifted through the air. Truck drivers moved in and out of the building. Families stopped for snacks and fuel. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew what had happened. And strangely enough, that felt comforting. I bought coffee I didn't want, sat alone in my truck, and watched people come and go. Meanwhile, my phone continued lighting up. Photos, messages, wedding updates, congratulations, smiling faces, heart emojis. Not one message asking where I was. Not one person wondering why I wasn't in the pictures. Not one person questioning my absence. I opened a text conversation with Olivia, typed several messages, deleted all of them. Because deep down I already knew the truth. If she wanted me there, I would have been there. That realization settled over me like a heavy blanket. For years I had convinced myself things were improving, that my sacrifices mattered, that eventually my families would see me as more than their emergency solution. More than the person who fixed everything. More than the reliable daughter who always rescued everyone. But sitting alone in that parking lot, I finally understood something. I had spent years trying to earn a place that should have belonged to me from the beginning. And I was tired. Tired of proving my worth. Tired of fixing everyone's mistakes. Tired of sacrificing my own peace. Tired of being useful. Because usefulness isn't the same thing as love. And somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that truth. As the sun slowly dipped toward the horizon, casting golden light across the parking lot, I wiped my eyes and looked straight ahead. Then I quietly whispered something nobody else heard. Enough. At the time, I believed the wedding was the worst part of the story, please. I believed the humiliation was over. I believed the heartbreak had reached its limit. I was wrong. Because 12 days later, while sitting inside a small office at Fort Campbell, my phone rang. And that call would reveal a betrayal far greater than being excluded from a wedding. A betrayal involving forged documents, stolen identity information, and more than $20,000. And once the truth started coming out, nothing in my family would ever be the same again. 12 days after Olivia's wedding, I was sitting inside a cramped office at Fort Campbell, staring at a spreadsheet that made absolutely no sense. The afternoon heat pressed against the building like a heavy blanket. Outside, someone was backing up a truck, and the constant warning beep echoed every few seconds through the thin walls. My coffee had gone cold, my knee hurt from an old training injury, and my patience was running dangerously low. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down. Mom. For several seconds, I simply stared at the screen. Since the wedding, she hadn't called once. No explanation, no apology, no concern. Nothing. Just silence. So when her name appeared, a knot immediately formed in my stomach. Finally, I answered, "Hello." She didn't bother with a greeting. "Why isn't my card working?" I frowned. "What?" "My card," she snapped. "The venue says the payment didn't go through." I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. For a moment, I genuinely thought I had missed part of the conversation. "What does that have to do with me?" A brief silence followed. Then her voice became colder. "Madison, don't start this." That sentence instantly put me on edge. Whenever my mother said, "Don't start this," it usually meant she was about to blame me for something I hadn't done. We need you to take care of it. I laughed, the same hollow laugh I'd given outside the country club. Take care of what? The remaining balance. I sat back slowly. What balance? The wedding balance. A chill crawled up my spine. How much? She exhaled dramatically. $23,000. For a second, everything around me seemed to stop. $23,000. The number echoed through my head. Outside, the truck continued beeping. Inside my office, the fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead. Yet all I could hear was that number. $23,000. I looked down at my coffee cup. My name was misspelled on the side. For some reason, I focused on that tiny detail because it felt easier than processing what I had just heard. Finally, I spoke. You're asking me to pay $23,000 for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend? Mom sighed loudly. Don't be dramatic. Something inside me tightened. I had been called stubborn, difficult, cold, independent, too serious, too emotional. But dramatic? After being excluded from my own sister's wedding? That almost felt insulting enough to be impressive. Mom, I said carefully, I drove 7 hours to be there. Olivia needed peace that day. I closed my eyes. And now she needs money, Mom continued. She's starting a marriage. You're her older sister. There it was. The familiar family logic. I was family when there was a bill. Family when there was a crisis. Family when someone needed rescuing. But apparently not family enough to attend a wedding. I'm not paying, I said. The words surprised even me. They came out calmer than I expected. Cleaner. Stronger. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then Mom gasped. Actually gasped. Excuse me? I'm not paying. You have a stable government paycheck. I glanced around my office, the worn-out furniture, the aging filing cabinet, the dusty fan struggling to circulate air. Yeah, I said quietly, and I work for Everydler. Her voice sharpened. The military gives you housing, insurance, benefits. That one hit a nerve. People always said things like that, as if service members lived some magical, stress-free life, as if the military didn't take holidays, birthdays, relationships, sleep, peace of mind. Years off your knees, years off your back, years off your life. I took a slow breath. The army doesn't exist so Olivia can have imported roses. Mom's voice cracked with anger. You listen to me. Your name is already attached to the paperwork. My stomach dropped. The room suddenly felt very small. What paperwork? Silence, not confusion. Fear, actual fear. I stood up, slowly. What paperwork, Mom? She hesitated, then sighed. The venue. I froze. What? Olivia said it was standard. My pulse quickened. I never signed anything. Another pause. Longer this time. Finally, she whispered something that made my blood run cold. Don't make this ugly. I stared at the wall, at the military inventory charts hanging beside my desk, at the American flag sticker someone had placed on the printer years ago, and suddenly something became crystal clear. It got ugly before I answered this phone. Then I hung up. For several seconds, I simply stood there. My hands were shaking. I hated that. I could brief senior officers without hesitation, handle emergency situations, manage soldiers, coordinate logistics, solve complex problems. But one phone call from my mother could still make me feel 12 years old. Eventually, I sat down, opened my computer, and searched for the country club's number. The events coordinator answered after 2 rings. Rolling Hills Country Club. This is Patricia. I introduced myself. Immediately, her tone changed. Oh, Miss Carter, we've been trying to reach you. Fear settled into my chest. Not anger. Fear. I need copies of every document that contains my name. A pause. Then Patricia spoke carefully. Are you saying there's an issue? I never agreed to pay for my sister's wedding. Silence. Then keyboard clicks. More silence. Finally, she returned. Miss Carter, according to our records, you're listed as a secondary financial guarantor. I gripped the phone tighter. I never signed anything. Patricia hesitated. We have an electronic signature. My heart sank. We also have a copy of your driver's license and military email. The room seemed to tilt slightly. My driver's license, my military email, my information. I swallowed hard. Send me everything. 5 minutes later, the documents arrived. I opened the PDF, and there it was. My full legal name. Madison Grace Carter. My military email. A scanned copy of my Kentucky driver's license. And a signature. A signature that looked close enough to fool a stranger. But not close enough to fool me. The M was wrong. The loop was wrong. The spacing was wrong. Whoever created it had copied the appearance. But not the habit. Not the muscle memory. Not the tiny details that come from years of signing your own name. Someone had tried, and that realization made me sick. Because it meant this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, thinking. Then another memory surfaced. 3 years earlier, Dad had once used my name on a loan application. Not officially, just explore options. I had been furious. Mom cried. Dad apologized. Olivia said I was overreacting. Eventually, I let it go, and suddenly I understood something. When you forgive people for crossing a line, some people don't see mercy. They see permission. I printed every document, saved every email, downloaded every attachment, and by the end of the day, a thick folder sat on my desk. The evidence kept growing: contracts, payment agreements, vendor correspondence, signatures, financial guarantees, all connected to me, all created without my permission. For the first time since the wedding, I wasn't wondering how to solve my family's problem. I was wondering how far they had gone, and that question terrified me. Because deep down, I already knew the answer wasn't going to be good. The next morning, before most people had even arrived for work, I walked into the legal assistant's office carrying that folder. I wish I could say I felt strong. I didn't. I felt embarrassed, ashamed, humiliated, not because I had done anything wrong. Because families like mine have a way of making their mistakes feel like your burden. I sat across from Captain Sarah Mitchell and handed her the documents. She read everything quietly. No interruptions, no dramatic reactions, just careful attention. Finally, she tapped the signature page. You're saying this isn't yours? No. And you never authorized anyone to sign on your behalf? No, she nodded. Then said 4 words that changed everything. This is possible forgery. The word landed heavily. Forgery. It sounded too serious, too official, too criminal, too big. I pictured Olivia smiling in her wedding dress beneath thousands of dollars worth of flowers. And suddenly my stomach twisted. Captain Mitchell must have noticed. Because her voice softened. I'm not telling you what to do emotionally, she said. But legally, you need to protect yourself. I stared at the folder. What happens if I refuse to pay? She didn't hesitate. You dispute everything. And then? You document everything. And then? You stop protecting people who aren't protecting you. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she added quietly, family cases are usually the hardest. I believed her. Because for the first time in my life, I was finally starting to understand something. The wedding wasn't the betrayal. The wedding was simply the moment I finally saw it. And now the truth was beginning to surface, one document at a time.